How many of you have been to the Symphony? Most, probably some of you. How many of you have heard classical music before? All right, most of you have, right? Most classical music is done by a symphony. Now, if you go to the Symphony or you listen carefully to a symphony, you're going to hear strings, you're going to hear horns, percussion, woodwinds. I'm sure there are others that I'm not bringing up. Lots of different instruments, right? But what makes a symphony as beautiful as it and moving as it is, often is the conductor. Not because the conductor plays the music, the conductor controls the music. When do the horns play? How loud are the strings supposed to be playing at any given time? When are the woodwinds and horns supposed to play together? And are they playing fast or slow? That sort of thing. So the conductor is modulating the music, right? The same thing can be said for the brain. In the brain you have lots of different skills. Attention, language, emotion, memory, visual, spatial processing. There are many, many skills. But what makes these skills work, what makes a person successful is how they work together. When are you supposed to pay attention to one thing? When are you supposed to divide your attention among different sets of information? When are you supposed to listen as opposed to talk? How do you understand what slang means, or what slang is, or pragmatic language, or figurative language? All of this, and how do you know when to change your behavior? How do you know when to modulate it just a little bit so that you're a little more successful? Sometimes it's just a little change that means the difference between success and failure at school and in social related. Okay? That's where executive functions come in. Definition. There are lots of them. I actually had 5 pages of definitions. I didn't put 5 pages in, but I do have a number of definitions in here. Just to give you an idea, like most things in life, there's not one definition that everybody accepts. But you'll see as we go through, they all have a little bit of the same thing in it. There are functions that are supervisory, managerial, and goal-directed. Most of this information, by the way, you'll find at the end of the talk. I have a lot of references. Most of these are from journal articles. But there are lots of books. You can go to Barnes & Noble, for example. You can find there are many books on executive functions that aren't just written for professionals, that are written for parents as well. They're the central or overarching self-regulatory abilities that orchestrate specific processes like language and attention, what have you, to achieve goal-oriented problem-solving and behavior. The idea of goal-oriented behavior is important. If you react, typically there's not much of a goal to reaction unless you want to say fight or flight. Okay, there's a goal to that, to save yourself. But to plan and to engage in a task and to give yourself feedback and then to modulate your behavior, that's this idea of goal-oriented behavior. And that's what executive functions help do. It exerts top-down control on the information that is coming in so that you only pay attention to the information that's relevant. If you tried to pay attention to everything, you wouldn't pay attention to anything. And you'd miss, right? What happens, those of you who are parents, those of you who are teachers, do you have students who don't pay attention to the relevant information in a lecture? Maybe you didn't pay attention to the relevant information in a lecture, right? And then you had to go back and you had to study it twice as hard for the test. Knowing how to do that, that comes from executive functions. The ability to prepare multiple steps of action in advance, evaluate those actions, avoid or suppress non-goal behavior, inhibition control, and then change course of action if necessary. Again, modulating your behavior. Okay, and there are a number of other ones that I'm not going to read through, but you've got the handouts there. The one that I really want you to pay attention to is this last one here. It's the quality of skill performance versus the quantity. Anybody can engage in a specific activity for a long time, especially if it's simple. But to do it well, so well that they can then move and advance onto more complex tasks. That's what executive function is. What are they? There are a lot of them, but there are 3 that I'd like you to pay more attention to, and those are in bold. Attention control, not attention. Attention is a very primitive skill. Okay? Everybody can pay attention to a degree, but your ability to control that attention, to modulate it, to shift from one set of information or one activity or one stimulus to the next, to divide your attention between 2 things. Okay? That's an executive function. Inhibition. the ability to pay attention to something you don't really want to pay attention to, the ability to sit still, even though you don't want to, even though you're angry and you want to aggress towards a peer, physically or verbally, you don't. That's inhibitory control. Okay? Working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold information online for a few seconds, to modify it or to work with it. And I'll show you some of the tests that we use for working memory. This is particularly important when you're taking notes, for example. The teacher's talking, there is a time gap between when the teacher's talking and you're going down to write. Holding that information online enough to finish that statement, whatever the teacher had said 3 seconds before, that's working memory. A lot of kids who have difficulty in school have working memory problems. Concept formation, the ability to take information that seems at first, I mean, sometimes it may seem like it goes together, and other times it may not be so explicitly similar. And to find a concept, to form that concept between that information. Organization, both in terms of organizing your environment, but also organizing your thoughts. Being able to express yourself eloquently when you write, for example, is an executive function. Shifting cognitive set, what's known as mental flexibility. Being able to go back and forth between two sets of rules, two sets of stimuli, whatever. If you're in conversation with two people, being able to hear what this person's saying, and then this person, and then going back and forth, particularly if they're giving you two different viewpoints, for example. This person likes chocolate, this person likes vanilla. Your ability to hold that information online, which is working memory, and then to shift back and forth between that memory, that's mental flexibility. Fluency and speed, how quickly can you do something accurately? Like I said, anybody can do something fast. I can give you 20 math problems, and you can go through that in 10 seconds, and you can miss all of them. Right? To go fast and accurate. Planning, self-regulation, metacognition. Self-regulation is simply the ability to control your behavior, control your emotions. Metacognition, I love this word, I love this idea. Metacognition is thinking about how you think. Do you ever do that? I don't think all adults do that. And certainly kids can have a hard time doing that. Why did I think that? Why am I thinking that now? Why am I thinking that that person is a threat? Why am I thinking that that person is calling me something when maybe they're actually not? Why am I thinking that the problem could be solved this way when somebody else is demonstrating how it could be solved a different way? That's what this is. And in particular, it's this self-monitoring, also known as kind of updating your working memory. This is just paying attention to how you're doing, how you're solving a problem, for example, and then giving yourself feedback and saying, that's not quite working. I got to try something else. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again to solve a problem, even though you're never coming to the solution, it's not very helpful. It's a waste of time. Your performance is not as good, and you're probably not going to learn, or not as fast. More specifically, these are just more specific examples of what I just showed you. Okay? And again, I'll kind of allow you to read through these on your own. Some of these came from Russell Barkley. Russell Barkley is a very well-known researcher in the field of ADHD. Some of his theories, some part of his theory is a little controversial, but he has done a lot of work in the ADHD field. And almost any childhood disorder, at least mental disorder, has some component of executive dysfunction in it. But ADHD in particular. Okay, and we'll get a little bit, we can talk a little bit more about ADHD as we go along. By the way, if you have any comments, if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to bring them up, okay? Now, again, because I'm a brain guy, I have to talk about brain anatomy. We're not doing a test after this, but it's just so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. That way, if your child, or if you know someone, for example, who sustains an injury to this part of that brain, you're going to know, okay, this is more likely to happen, or this could be, they're at least at higher risk for this particular type of problem, for executive